Welcome to the Critical Media Studies Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike Rapici
and Barry Fall.
Hi, Michael. How are you this evening?
Barry, I'm doing wonderfully. It's good to see you. I'm excited to do a little media theory chat.
So that's exactly what we're going to do. Tonight, we are going to discuss an essay from Federica. I'm going to do my faux Italian world. Please forgive me. I'm going to do my faux Italian accents here. I'm not going to read in an accent, but I'm going to read an Italian name and do my best. Michael should be doing this, but I'm going to. This is an article. We're going to be discussing an article by Federica Merenda. And the title of the article is Reading Arendt, as in Hannah Arendt, to Rethink Truth, Science, and Politics. As you might already tell from the title, it's a reconsideration of Hannah Arendt's, I believe, 1969 article called Truth in Politics, considering the relation of truth and philosophy to politics. Let me give it the full title and then we'll commence. Reading Arendt to Rethink Truth, Science, and Politics in the Era of Fake News. It is from a collection, a 2020 collection called, and this is kind of introducing not just this episode, but maybe a few episodes to come. And Michael will tell you more about that in a moment. But anyway, Federica Merenda's article comes from a collection called Democracy and Fake News, a 2020 collection that is where the authors of this particular collection are wrestling with the problem of truth in politics, Arendt's keywords, but in the media age, and dealing with media, including social media realities, including disinformation, fake news, and in general, exploring post-truth, quote unquote, post-truth politics. And the editors, and then I'll pass it to Michael. I'll pass it to you, Michael. The editors are Serena Giusti and Elisa Paras.
Right. And so the idea here, the thinking that Barry and I are playing with is tonight, and Barry, feel free to amend this as I go, but the plan is, as I understand our plan this evening, is to discuss how Merenda understands Arendt in terms of the relationship between truth, politics, various flavors of truth, and fake news, and how these exist in a really interesting and uneasy tension with each other. And so the idea is to discuss the ideas here, and then to let those ideas function as the basis for similar discussions between media, truth,
Absolutely.
you know, in sort of through other theoretical lenses, if you will.
Absolutely. And I guess in this particular episode, and correct me if I'm wrong, in this particular episode, we're mostly going to, I think we are going to invoke media, mention media, and new media realities and new media formats. But the emphasis of this particular prelude episode or foundation laying episode is going to be the relation between truth, what Arendt means by truth, and what Arendt means by politics.
Yeah.
In particular, democracy. So we're mostly going to be dealing with those two terms, truth and politics.
I think smarter podcasting has the discussion first and then comes back and records that and cuts it into the introduction. But this is we are going to do this without a net. So I think the grand takeaway, Barry, and you just said it, is that
so much the worse for smarter podcasts. That's all I got to say.
That's right. But I think you hit it there. The idea that we're working with here is that tonight sort of serves as a prelude to the next several discussions. And with that in mind, I think we would humbly submit the request that if you have anything that you feel would, be a part of this discussion that we should look at, by all means, send it along. The website has the email. It sounds like an incredibly bulky way of getting there, but criticalmediastudiespodcast.com has an email that you can send us suggestions from. You can also send us suggestions about other things if you'd like, and we do love to hear it.
And along those lines, and then we're with that,
We
we are
really are going to
ready to
start
go.
talking.
We're ready to rip into, so to speak, this particular article. But on the particular topic of our fab listeners, we did want to give a special thank you, and we appreciate you to Michael Ryan, who teaches film and film related subjects at Emerson College. Thank you, Michael, for your very kind words. All right.
Shall we?
Yes, we shall. So let's begin with the introduction, with Merenda's introduction, where Merenda works through truth in politics and democracy, and a little bit, maybe, no, I guess Merenda doesn't so much talk about media and fake news. This is going to be the political science part of her essay, and we're going to try to work through, and in talking about Merenda's concepts, we'll be kind of working through, obviously, the original formulation from Hannah Arendt in her essay, Truth in Politics. Does that sound right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, then let me proceed. So now I'm going to read a couple things from the introduction of Merenda's our article. Michael, I'm going to read this, but this first portion is going to be a fair amount of reading. You feel free to interrupt as you see fit.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So, quote, sharing Arendt's view that philosophy can help us understand reality and to reconcile ourselves with the world we live in. This chapter, I'm reading Merenda's thesis, this chapter will consider relevant concepts and paradigms elaborated in Arendt's works, which have been at the center of modern and contemporary Western political thought, even beyond Arendt. Okay, now, without any further ado, let's get to some of those legacy concepts. So, in order, a little bit further on in the introduction, in fact, in a section called Contextualizing Arendt on Truth in Politics in Western Philosophy, and now we've hit pay dirt. Merenda writes, in order to contextualize Arendt's definition of truth and truths and their relationship with democratic politics, I guess I should say, it's fair to say that for both Merenda and Arendt, politics is basically this idea of democracy is the paradigm for politics. And I think democracy in the kind of Arendt's concept of democracy is heavily influenced, some critics say too heavily influenced, by the Greek model, by the model of the polis. So kind of deliberative democracy where you have assemblies, and also kind of direct democracy, where people where there are councils and smaller bodies, even smaller than senates and houses of representatives, but like small councils making decisions on everyday matters for what counts as the polis. So that's right. The kind of democracy, and that's what we mean by politics in this. Okay, that's, I think, important to mention before we go further. We adopt the distinction drawn by, this is really testing me in Italian. We adopt the distinction drawn by Annetella Bassucci in her work devoted to the concept of truth in contemporary political philosophy. So Bassucci usefully distinguishes between those political theories suggesting a banalization of the relationship between truth and politics and those tending toward a dramatization. It is in this second group that we find Arendt. Okay, what is meant by banalizing the relationship between truth and politics? The perspective of those, Merenda continues. The perspective of those allegedly banalizing such relation is quite clear-cut in its premises. According to these thinkers, there is no objective truth at all. to be found, uh,
To be found
found
out.
out beyond our subjective interpretations. To bring this belief to its extreme would mean to say that there is no such thing as objective facts. Subjective interpretations of reality are all that we have. Okay, where does Arendt lie? On the other hand, she lies, I think, in this other hand, or her thought resides in this other hand, which I'll read. On the other hand, political theorists who dramatize the relationship between truth and politics are not expressly excluding the possibility that an objective truth does exist. Let me go back and read that last bit of the sentence because I think it's worth remarking on. Michael, this is how I think. Here's the kind of, and I think this is important because here Merenda is explicating the Arendtian position. Now, I noticed the interesting the statement is kind of equivocating, it's kind of ambiguous, and I think that's precisely the point. It's not saying that an objective truth does exist. Rather, the thinkers who dramatize the relationship between truth and politics are not obligated to believe that an objective truth exists. But they do not systematically, unlike the first group of thinkers, they do not systematically exclude the possibility that an objective truth outside of politics does exist.
Correct.
This second group of thinkers, the dramatists,
the dramatists,
they believe that facts do exist.
Yes.
So let me just read one more, and then I sense
I sense a discussion
coming. Things to say. Yeah. What they point out is rather, so it's not about saying there is an objective truth, and now we have to create a politics in light with that objective truth. But it is this kind of bedrock assumption that facts exist. And if facts exist, then there is always going to be, continuing reading, an incompatibility between truth and politics, supporting the idea that truth has no place in the political democratic
right.
Yeah, at least in ordinary circumstances. In this view rather, truth does not concern politics in as far as the objective of democratic politics is not to ascertain which human representation of reality does correspond to truth. Okay. Should I stop here, or should
I think that's a lot to unpack. Let's put the brakes on here for a second. Right. So just to sort of try and wrap this into two tidier camps, right?
Okay.
There's there's two conceptions of truth, the banalization of truth and the dramatization of truth. And I think they both revolve around sort of the organization or formulation of politics and how politics can function. And so with the banalization of truth, we don't have a universal agreed upon, there is no shared terra firma, if you will, right? Everything is subjective. And the problem politically with this is that when you don't have that common ground, there is no coming together. And so she says, and this is something that you had skipped over, but an objective truth does not exist. To attribute the quality of truth to our subjective interpretations of the world will thus be a decision that we will take considering what truth does rather than what it is. Yes, and I think that distinction is critical here because in a world where truth is subjective, and I think we're going to come back around to this idea in the discussion of a post-truth or fake news world, right? Because it serves kind of the same purpose, is that your individual truth allows other truths. It becomes sort of a domino or a decision tree, if you will, where one begets another. Similarly, you could argue they foreclose other options. Whereas in the dramatization of truth, because we have the possibility of shared facts, right? water is wet, ice is cold, etc. We then have a point of common discussion. There is a point from which we can both proceed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And in that regard, the discussion about what truth allows us to do, and it allows us to agree. And
It
we can,
allows us to agree. Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
so no, that's I think that's sort of the key distinction between the two, and the idea here that agreeing on facts does not translate into an agreement
On
on
policy.
policy or even on necessarily what those facts mean, which I think is an interesting
Absolutely.
distinction that we get to.
Absolutely. Right.
Rather, it's just a common starting point.
But I think for those thinkers that you very well described, and thank you for picking up the sentence that I left out. That actually was a very key sentence. And now I think things are snapping into place thanks to your explication. But I think an important aspect of this truth is that it also sets limits, and in a sense sets limits on all the actors who are within this camp. In other words, facts have facts have the force to compel actors of various opinions, people who interpret the truth quite differently, nonetheless, feel the coercion, the brunt, the force, the validity of facts.
I think maybe a different way of saying that is that the presence of facts defines things in a way where certain things are now inside of a particular discussion or area of concern, certain things are outside. This sets guardrails.
Guardrails. That's a better way, because and thank you. You did that better as well. That I think the question of this notion of facts introduces guardrails. It sets limits to discussion, and it kind of sets a frame for possible interpretations.
Yes.
Even though it's not creating a single interpretation, but it's a kind of framework that allows interpretation to happen at all. Otherwise, you don't have any guardrails, you don't have any limits. And the only way to, I think, unfortunately, settle the conflict of interpretations is by power.
Yes.
Like there's some sort of arbitrary power or arbitrary will that gets imposed to stop the conflict of interpretations. Yeah.
Yes. No, I was going to say, but that in and of itself is again a function of having a shared perspective.
Absolutely.
At a certain point. Is that
Absolutely.
Again, so I think this idea of the dramatization, it enables these discussions to happen with some sort of predictable order or form.
Perfect. And I'm going to go a little bit.
Yes.
I'm going to go to the next page in the article and pick up two things. Pick up just two pieces from page 22 that I think directly speak to what we're speaking about now. And when we're talking about ways in which facts create a clearing. Dare I invoke Martin?
Oh boy. Okay.
Create a clearing. I'm thinking of that as another way of saying what you're saying. Like
I quite like that. Right? I quite like that though, because to further invoke Heidegger here, we are in dangerous territory. This is why you always record that intro afterwards. But yeah, right. Well, we're talking about Arendt, so here's your uncomfortable combination there. There you go.
Oh wow.
Do you like that?
Yeah.
No, but that to further this use of Heidegger, right? The clearing, the idea of sort of a revealing of the this creates
right.
a situation where these truths create a revealing where this discussion or these politics can exist and where they can't. I think that's tidy.
And actually, maybe we are not far afoot, considering that Arendt was Heidegger's student. Maybe we're not far afoot in thinking ways that it would make sense that an essay on truth would have something to do with revealings, clearings, disclosures, right? So anyway, these interestingly enough, the passages I'm going to read talk about more about the guardrails than clearing,
Yeah.
though I'm very happy we got in that metaphor because, but it's interesting that these two passages talk about the coercive power of truth. I'll read them. In
Yes.
Arendt's view, any truth is coercive. And, one way of I'm interpreting coercive is that it exerts some sort of push and influence. It's shaping, maybe delimiting the actions of, it's delimiting the behavior of a variety of actors, a variety of subjects. So not just one particular
And
subject, potentially all of them, right, in the
and,
political view.
and this is because a fact is
It's
beyond
non-negotiable.
dispute. It compels
Yes.
you to
Yes.
see things through
Yes.
whatever its purview is.
Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly Miranda's point. Any truth is coercive because it is beyond agreement, beyond interesting, right? Beyond agreement, beyond dispute, beyond opinion, or classic democratic word, consent,
Consent.
which are precisely those elements as we found in Rawls and the major modern contemporary political theorists, which make democratic politics of the overlapping consensus possible. In this being indisputable and non-negotiable, truth is intrinsically anti-democratic.
And
It's
but
not working in terms of, oh, let's just get to a consensus on what happened. No, it is, there is no consensus of what happened. The fact tells you what happened.
yes, so this is not that's
We're
it's
not going to agree about it. We're not going to dispute it. This is the thing precisely we cannot
well,
dispute
but it's not because we've accepted that this is
because
fact.
we've accepted.
So
Yes.
it's not yeah, no, okay, we're good. Yeah, this is intrinsically anti-democratic. There is no discussion. There is no debate. This is what it is, and we are operating with that principle in mind.
And this is a place, and I'll also read this passage, the next paragraph, because even though we're not going to talk too much about media here, it is where we bring in where Merenda brings in the problem of fake news, and it's worth noting. Also, this is the category which acquires critical relevance today with reference to the problem of fake news. It is factual truths that fake news denies. So, in other words, the very practice of fake news kind of assumes, Michael, I'm going back to our first discussion point. What was that? There were the groups who believe in dramatizing the relationship between truth and politics, and that's Arendt. And then there were those who want to banalize the
Yes.
relation between truth and politics. Now, interestingly enough, I think that implies, Merenda's implying, there's a kind of, whatever fake news does, there's a kind of active philosophy. There's a philosophical core to fake news in its practice, and the practice of fake news assumes that there is no such thing as an objective truth, that truth is there to be molded as I decree or as a certain group decrees.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think about like fake news, like there's an implicit philosophy behind that practice, which I think would put it, the purveyors of fake news believe that there is no dramatic debate or agon struggle between truth and politics because there's no objective truth and facts are fungible.
Right. This is the banalization.
That's the banalization.
Yeah.
Okay, you continue. It is factual truths that fake news denies. On the contrary, according to Arendt, rational truths are both generally at odds with the political debate and also with odds with the exercise of democratic power in a pluralistic society. As truth is not democratic, it does not allow for the plurality of opinions, which is the essential nourishment of democracy. And now I'm just going to read one more quote, and then I think we're done with the essay, and we'll have to see if we can flesh out and come to peace with these concepts. Okay, so, but that's an important moment in Merenda's article that we wanted to revisit. which is what's the particular thing we want to take away from this? The way that truth, the idea that objective facts exist is in potential tension with the entire democratic project. But here's the thing that Michael and I were going to have to talk about, because at the same time, while this claim that facts exist and exert power over democratic citizens, but is fundamentally outside of democracy, even anti-democratic, Arendt also believes that without that objective fact-filled realm, you can't have a politics at all. And so this is the last passage I want to read. On the other hand, factual truths, while being at odds with the political debate, in their being uncontroversial by beyond dispute, disagreement, whatever, are not only totally compatible with democratic politics, anti-democratic, but totally compatible with democratic politics, but even, Merenda adds, for Arendt, it's necessary for it. While this can appear contradictory, it works if we accept that facts belong to another dimension, which is placed underneath as the ground, right?
Yeah,
we're back to Heidegger.
The bedrock of.
Yeah, we're back to, in a way, we are back to Heidegger. It's ground, it's clearing, it's things like that, which is placed at the bedrock, to use Michael's word, which is placed underneath that of politics itself. Quote, facts, and she's quoting Arendt in this, facts and events constitute the very texture of the political realm. They are the ground political opinions can be built upon. If we do not agree on the facts at hand, we can appropriately start We cannot appropriately start any discussion about how to deal with them, exchanging our opinions on the issue.
So let's take a second, because there's a couple terms here that I think we need to tease out before we can make an exit. She's playing with this idea of factual truths and rational truths. And I think we need to figure out what exactly Merenda's doing with that and how these relate to the mission of politics and then the place of fake news. And I think as I was reading this, the question, this is all very relational to me. And as I understand this, you have factual truth, and then as a subset of factual truth, you have rational truth, excuse me. And then as those ebb, we see sort of the onset of fake news, which disrupts the political process, the political mission, right? So as I understand this, factual truths are those truths which are beyond debate. These are beyond politics. These are statements of fact. But oddly enough, they're beyond and this is where I think the contradiction comes in, right? They're beyond politics in the sense that we don't discuss them, we don't debate them, they are.
They are, right? Yes,
that
is precisely the point.
But you need those for a political process because it creates a starting point. So that's the contradiction. It's sort of like
that's the tension.
You need them as the container or the basis upon which politics exists, but they are not a part of politics.
They are not themselves.
They're not political.
They are not themselves political. In fact, if they were, they would.
Then they become anti-democratic. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right.
And so then you have the rational truth, which, as I understand, she means to be sort of the opinions or the derivatives of, I don't say opinions, I like derivatives of factual truth. These become the application of truth, if you will. If this, then this. And as I understand it, and this is sort of, I could be off here, but this sort of underscores the fragility of the democratic political process in a way, is that these are rational deductions from factual truth. But there is room for politics here in the sense that there is a discussion about what these mean. I think that the idea that I have is sort of, and this is way outside of my league, so I'm sure that somebody listening could probably take issue. You may take issue with this, but this is sort of like mathematical theorems. We genuinely hold them to be true, but in certain instances, there may be disagreement about how they function. And that is where, as I understand it, these can be at times political. But this also seems to overlap with the banalization of politics when we talk about what truth does rather than what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so if I'm understanding this, factual truth becomes the container. Rational truth is the result of that container, which is generally agreed upon.
Well, I'm going to slightly take issue with you.
I'm
going to slightly take issue with you only by reference to a passage
Yeah.
on 22. But before I slightly take issue with you, let's make sure I understand what you're saying, because what you correct me if I'm wrong.
So here,
were you saying that rational truths derive from the factual truths? Because that's what I was taking issue with.
Well, so here,
yes,
factual truths. It is the factual truths that factual truths of being an odds of the political debate are necessary for the exercise of democratic power in a plural society. Right.
Yes.
These are the truths that are beyond debate, beyond discussion.
Indeed.
She says further, it is factual truths that fake news denies.
Indeed.
Okay. She goes down. The content of rational truth can be admitted to the public sphere of democratic politics only a form of opinion among other opinions. So my understanding of this is that the fact, let's put fake news to the side.
We are.
Because we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Factual truths are what you and I 20 years ago may have referred to as facts. And this would withstand the political process. We would say, okay, this wall is made of brick, or this water is this temperature, right? These are facts that are beyond dispute. This is not something that we're going to talk about.
Correct.
The rational truth is so she says, in the form of a mere opinion among other opinions. I understand that to be, this is my interpretation of the value or implication or application of these factual truths.
I'm going to slightly take it. Okay, I did understand what you're saying. I'm going to slightly take issue with that, but don't feel bad, because I'm about to take issue. This is going to get messy, Michael, because I'm about to take issue with Merenda more than I'm taking.
Okay, now time out. Before you do this,
I'm
not ready. I'm not. That's fine. My statement is my interpretation of what Merenda is saying. I am not necessarily saddling my wagon to this horse there.
I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you're not. That's all I'm
okay,
saying, because it would get really messy. But I'm going to now, Merenda, right before the passage I was reading, I'm just going to refer us both. I'll read it. But I'm going to refer us both, and let's work through this. Because Merenda quotes Arendt's definitions of both rational truths and factual truths. And where I'll read it, but I'll tell everyone my issue. As I understand it, she includes a list of two rational truths.
She being Merenda.
One of them does not make sense to me. One of them, I think, should be categorized as factual truth. But let me read the passage. This is just 2 paragraphs from where I was reading previously. So basically in the same passage, if you have the article or the book, you'll be able to find it. In Arendt's definition, factual truths are just factual statements which describe facts and events. Now, in this block quote that follows, I'm going to jump back up.
Sure.
Jump down. We have examples of factual statements. So here they are from Arendt. Um, Three angles of a triangle are equal to two angles of a square. The earth moves around the sun. It is better to suffer wrong than to do wrong. Well, goodness, goodness. Okay. See, to me, okay, let me read.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm getting confused myself. Now I'm not confused by Merenda. I'm confused by Arendt because I'm going to read what the prose text is, and then you're going to help me understand what's going on
Sure,
now
sure, sure,
because now I'm
sure.
confused. Okay. In Arendt's definition, factual truths are just factual statements which describe facts and events with reasonable approximation. To say it rains when it is actually raining, that's a factual truth.
Right.
Rational truths, a category which also includes philosophical and religious truths, are instead
Which,
expressed in
pause for a
the
second, right? Both of those are subject to political discourse, though.
yeah, okay, and I
Okay.
realize that, and I'll just finish the sentence,
Yeah,
and
no,
now
keep going.
you're gonna tutor me because I am not getting the distinction. Rational truths, a category which also includes philosophical and religious truths,
Right.
are instead expressed in the form of statements like 2 + 2 is 4 or God exists. Now, let me just say one last thing, and then you're going to have to clear up my confusion. I totally get why God exists is a rational truth and not a factual truth. In that one would have to, that would be something where, that par excellence, that would be something that could be fought out in the political sphere with people making arguments for their opinions. And that strikes me as the realm of rational truth. It is the realm of the non factual truth, where nonetheless there is a truth claim to it that one can reason about, argue about, present evidence for, and evidence against. The claim that God exists, one would support that by evidence for or evidence against.
Right.
One doesn't have to do that with factual truth, right? Now, explain to
Well,
me, dear Dr.
go,
Rapici, how 2 + 2 = 4 is a rational truth and not a factual truth.
well,
I don't get it. I don't also understand Arendt's example. It is better to suffer wrong than to do wrong. Wouldn't that also be a rational truth and not a factual truth?
I think you
Do
are
you see what I'm
correct.
saying
I
here?
think you're correct. And I can argue semantics here, right? If you have,
I do want, I guess I am arguing semantics, but semantics are important here, don't you think?
right. I think, I don't know. So okay. If it hasn't become clear already, I am not a mathematician. And Barry, in my world, 2 + 2 does not always equal 4. Okay. Um, I don't know how the 2 + 2 is 4 is framed as a rational truth, not a factual truth. I don't
Yeah,
understand
that's what
that.
I'm saying.
Okay.
That's what I'm
But
saying.
I can come up with wordplay that says, two Twinkies plus two Twinkies is one whole bunch of Twinkies, which is also simultaneously four
But aren't
Twinkies.
you doing fake news?
That's
I
what
mean,
I'm
what
saying.
we're
So
talking
here's so
about
here's so
is,
here's
yeah,
where I
yeah,
think that happens. Okay. If you think back to the dramatization
yeah,
and the banalization,
yeah.
okay, there is an overlap there in the version in the form of rational truth. Factual truth only exists in the dramatization because we collectively agree. But
Indeed,
in
indeed.
the banalization, and
Everything.
this is where I think fake
Okay.
news can become a thing. In that world, my subjective view and your subjective view can potentially happen to overlap. And when that happens, we have a place where rational truth can look like factual truth because we happen to agree. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes, that's very helpful.
So that's what I see there. And I think that is where the issue of so to me, the part that was interesting about this, a lot of this, I mean, I'm excited about the conversations to come, which I hope we can deliver on with what we've already promised, but we'll see how that works out.
Yeah,
What I'm interested in here is sort of the role that rational truth, like this term, I'm equally enthused and bothered by the fact that
hmm.
truth in Arendtian terms and from Merenda becomes synonymous really more with truthiness when you sort of follow it, to use the great
Oh
philosopher
yeah,
Stephen
yeah, I think
Colbert,
so.
as
I
we
think
follow
so.
this down the rabbit hole a little bit, right? Because as we've said, fake news becomes an outright rejection of factual news, right?
Sure.
Factual truth, excuse me.
Factual truth.
And the reason that it works, which I think is really interesting, and this is where we get into discussions of propaganda, et cetera, is that as Miranda and Arendt describe it, or Arendt describes it, fake news, these fictions are always going to be more compelling than factual news, because factual news is anathema to political discourse. It can't exist there because it's a given, and as such, it's boring. Whereas fake news, and I'm guessing we can make a space for relational, or excuse me, I keep saying relational, for rational
Rational.
truth, becomes that there is room for discussion there, and that discussion can be tailored. This gets us back to what we talked about at the very beginning about what truth can do, right? And what it does is now this becomes a rhetorical project.
Very good. Yeah. Very good point, Michael.
So I'm just excited to see how we pick this up, because this idea that, like, I guess prior to coming into this discussion, I had always held this idea that fake news somehow existed outside of the true political process, and that it was the result more of potentially an uninformed
And
population,
and
or
also maybe an interference with the political process. But if I understand your idea, I think it's a really great insight that you're saying that it's actually in the things I was fighting in the topic I was fighting about, like, where does factual truth end and where does rational truth begin? It's
yeah,
actually in that particular territory that one can find the place for falsehood, including
yeah. And I think
lying, deception, propaganda, falsehood of all sorts, including fake news, kind of comes out of that tension, right?
well,
And
that's
that
what's
outer
fast
territory.
that's what's fascinating, is the way this is presented. And I'm not sure yet, but it's compelling. This idea of fake news isn't a completely foreign part of this process. It's
Indeed,
in
indeed.
a
Yeah,
very
I like that a lot.
uncomfortable way. It's actually a sort of natural progression when you stretch it out a little bit. And so, on one hand, I guess it underscores really the fragility of the democratic process.
It would indeed. And two things to say about that. Number one, it might again, this might I really did not expect to be referencing Heidegger so much in this episode. You can knock me over a feather, but briefly, I'm going to do another Heidegger reference because the notion of truth is disclosure and clearing. Working with Heidegger's notion of truth, um, every clearing, every disclosure of the truth necessarily creates a kind of shadow realm,
Yes, yes.
right? It's never a total illumination. There's always a kind of darkness that is part of the clearing,
Yes.
and is that is is the territory of the illumination. I think what you're suggesting, what you're suggesting, reminds me of this particular topography of the truth, where it's in the tension, the cohabitation, intermingling, whatever is going on between factual truth and rational truth, that all sorts of troubling things kind of maybe organically, maybe they're fated to arise, right? Instead of being, as at least I thought before we had this conversation, I thought of something like fake news as being simply the product of bad actors. And, there are these bad actors. And that means if you just get rid of the bad actors, we're going to get rid of that pesky fake news thing. But what you're suggesting is that it's more complicated than that.
Well, it is, but
Yeah.
oh, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but
No,
I think again, if we go back to her original
mm-hmm.
comment here, right? An objective truth does not exist. To attribute the quality of truth to our subjective interpretations of the world will thus be a decision that we will take considering what truth does rather than what it is. What's so important about that is we tend to think of the concept of truth as a static thing.
Indeed.
And what we're seeing here now is
that
this notion of truth, especially the banalization of truth, is the result of a perspective which allows or shapes intention. This is more a verb than a noun. And
very good. That's a brilliant point too.
So it's unsettling, I think, because we are so tethered to this idea of a static truth. And both Arendt and Merenda, I think align with that, with this notion of factual truth, this thing that simply is. And even that is limiting in the sense that facts evolve, right? And so, and I think that's how we can look at this process of truth, and then the injection of fake news, right? The cycle of truth, if you will, or of truths, if you will, is that this is an evolution. And
but I totally hear your argument. I find it sympathetic. I do want to say that though that I want to allow the possibility here that Arendt herself may not want that notion, may not be admitting that notion of evolutionary truth. It seems like, as I read it so far, I'm not convinced that she is as evolutionary. And I mean, indeed, I think I might side with Rapici over Arendt, but
careful.
I don't think that Arendt. I'm uncertain whether or not Arendt it is herself evolutionary.
I'm not.
The challenge here is that she feels the factual truths are binding on everyone, and they are kind of static.
Yes, and I'm not saying that there is no such thing of factual truth. I'm not trying to de-dramatize this model. What I'm saying is that there is a process. You can't, because, and let's assume for a second that factual truths are static and everlasting. Those factual truths still become the basis of rational truths.
Yeah, I see. Right.
And those rational truths overlap as I'm reading this. And so regardless of whether you allow for factual truths to be dynamic over whatever period of time, or if you staple them, you nail them down and say these are all time, these are everlasting, it doesn't matter. They still give way, or they still give rise to this rational truth, which then becomes problematic.
Another thing I like about your this model of the dynamism, though, is I think it is one of the things that your interpretation of Arendt's model does is it takes the emphasis off fake news as being a postmodern eruption. And we've never seen anything like this before in the contest between truth and politics. Oh my gosh, there's fake news now. Hold the phone, stop the presses. Politics is over. There's something we've never had before. what as I understood the Rapici argument, you were suggesting that there is a way in which something like fake news, disinformation, propaganda was always part of the political horizon of this particular truth politics dyad that Arendt is talking. And I would think that's deeply sympathetic, whatever contradictions or tensions between the Rapici hypothesis and the Arendt hypothesis. There's one way in which what you're suggesting is really in keeping with Hannah Arendt in general. Like I do feel that all the in her time she wasn't reacting to social media, and she wasn't reacting even to the digital landscape or the digital mediascape in any of its forms. But what she was referring to was the age of propaganda, and thinking about 20th century political movements like totalitarianism, fascism,
Yeah.
corrupt democracies that are media, that are also exist in an uneasy tension with the information society. But there is a way in which, at the same time, even though she's aware of the novelty of her own time and the ruptures and new developments of her own time, Arendt is kind of a classical, is very informed again by the classic tradition and thinking about Greek democracy as a kind of model, for better or worse, for all possible democracies. And there are a lot of limits to that, but one strength of it is that she tends to see or allows for the disclosure of long-term continuities. And so one of them, I think, one of Arendt's foundational truths would be this: that anytime one has a democracy, that as soon as you have I won't even say democracy, as soon as you have a politics, you are always going to have a tension between truth, philosophical truth, and the ways of the polis. And that's kind of almost transhistorical. And so, yes, there are going to be novelties, but this basic tension between facts, philosophical truth, rational truth, and the political realm, that these things are going to be always coexisting, including the possibility of a political falsehood, right? All these things, politicized falsehoods, they were there from the start. We have media drawn developments, but it's kind of there in the original package.
Without question, I think the reason, and this is going to be my little off ramp here, I think the reason that we are seeing it so much more visibly, and it's becoming so much more of a central concern, is that we live in a media environment which really pushes the banalization of politics over the dramatization of politics.
Okay.
Because the internet has siloed us. It has enabled and really encouraged a world in which subjective truth can run unchecked. And
without guardrails.
Right. And that is going to open the floodgates. And not only is it doing it, but it is doing it on a global scale. And that's opening the floodgates for our rational truths to differ widely, but still find similar perspectives simultaneously. I mean, again, there's another great contradiction there, right? And so you have a media environment that is incredibly fertile and friendly to fake news, which would challenge what have otherwise been a process that would be slower than the news cycle itself.
Right.
And so it takes hold and it runs. So
I love that point.
Yeah, that's I am really looking forward to where we're going with this. Where I think we're going with this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to returning to this discussion and thinking of. So let's just close it out. What have what are some of the things we're going to be playing with or utilizing? Let's not say playing with,
I don't want to.
utilizing next time. We're going to be talking about, I think, this distinction between, oops, I don't know why I raised my hand in the virtual sphere. I didn't mean
But I
to.
call on you. Yes, sir, Barry. It's your turn to speak.
No, I just wanted to enlist you on this. I wasn't trying to speak. Trying to hold the floor. Uh, just thinking about what are some of the terms that we're going to be redeploying, reusing,
Well,
revisiting
for
in our
me,
next episode.
for
Factual
me,
truths, rational truths,
and I think it's not so much.
politics.
Yeah, I don't know yet, but I think that it's less terminological than theoretical. For
Okay.
me, it's really the interplay of factual truth, rational truth, and fake news. The
Okay.
way it's that cycle, and so I don't. I mean, the terms could change, but for me, this is a really interesting explanation for how we're here. And I'd like to see it challenged.
How we're here in our particular media moment. Is that what you meant?
Yes, in our in our
How we're,
in our in our particular media political moment, like how
okay.
how
Yeah, I
this is
got
even
you.
possible. And so I'd like to see it challenged. I'd like to see the vocabulary grow, but I think as a starting point, this is really fascinating.
I agree. I'm looking forward to our next episodes.
Yeah,
But
Barry,
I think we're drawing to a close here.
we are, and I say this every time, and I mean it every time, Barry. This is a ton of fun. Thank you.
I agree, Michael, and we have the same idea of fun. That's how we've done it for these 10 years, 15 years, how long we've been podcasting.
It's been a while.
Even before Joe Rogan, we were in the
Yeah,
sphere.
we're doing
We
this
were in
analog
this.
by carrier pigeon, by God. All right, Barry, I'll see you soon.
See you soon, Michael.
Take
Thanks
care.
again.
Thanks for listening to the Critical Media Studies podcast. To find out more about the show, check out our webpage at criticalmediastudiespodcast.com.